$10,000 will not make housing affordable. It's not going to cut home prices in half, it won't magically create cheaper rentals, and it definitely won't fix a housing crisis. So when states like Maine start to offer $10,000 to build housing, it almost seems pointless. However, it's important to understand that housing doesn't break or recover the way they think it does. This isn't about whether $10,000 is enough, it's about why housing supply stopped responding, why most fixes fail, and why tiny incentives sometimes work when massive ones don't. But to understand that, we have to start with a mistake that almost everyone makes. The question people usually ask is, does this make housing affordable? But that's the wrong question to ask in this case. Because housing crises don't start when prices go up. They start when supply stops responding to demand. Prices are the symptom. Inaction is the disease. And that's where programs like this come in. So let's be honest, an ADU usually costs like $100,000 to $300,000 to build. So no, when you take $10,000 off of that, it doesn't really change the math that much. It doesn't make them cheaper to build. But that's actually the intention behind this program. Because this program was never designed to make it affordable to build an ADU. It was simply designed to make people decide to build an ADU. Now here's what most people don't realize. The biggest barrier to housing isn't necessarily zoning, it isn't necessarily land, especially in Maine, and it isn't always even construction costs. One of the biggest barriers can be risk, specifically financing risk, amount of time invested risk, and what if this goes wrong risk. Most homeowners don't say no to building housing. They just never say yes. So that's where small incentives can make a difference. The $10,000 may not fund the construction, but it does something far more important, which is reducing early stage friction. This $10,000 from the state helps signal that the state supports this, there's financing available with the partners, Bangor Savings, and the process is navigatable because it was set up to help this be easier for homeowners. So you're not doing this alone like you may normally be. And for a lot of homeowners, that's the difference between this sounds interesting and okay, let's move forward with doing this. So anyone that's going to consider building an ADU wants to know, is this even going to help? And is it going to help me? And we have seen this pattern play out. In Portland, Oregon, ADUs were illegal for years, but hardly anyone built them. But what changed? It wasn't zoning. Fees were reduced. Friction dropped. Permits increased significantly after they did those actions. Same thing with California. Once the process became predictable, ADUs went from being rare to being one of the largest sources of new housing in the state. And this didn't happen overnight, obviously, but it has been a consistent increase over time. And here's one part that critics about this program are actually correct about. ADUs will not flood the market with cheap homes anytime soon. They will not crash prices, and they won't save buyers overnight. The housing shortage is far too big for that to happen no matter what we do. But that doesn't mean the program fails. It simply means that people don't understand what the success criteria for this program actually looks like. Success isn't affordability tomorrow. No program is going to be able to deliver that. Success is simply having homeowners start responding to help this problem get resolved long term. And this will simply increase incremental supply showing up. Pressure begins to ease over time instead of compounding, which is what's happening today. See, housing markets don't just get healed overnight. It's something that takes time. The housing market supply gets better when thousands of small decisions start happening again. Those add up and compound over time. And that's what this $10,000 is really working towards doing. And this is the most important insight that you've got to hear. Here's the key idea that most people miss. Housing didn't break because we lacked big policies. It broke because building became optional, risky, and slower. Programs like this certainly are not the only solution. They are just signals. It's meant to tell the market that we want supply to respond again. And if that signal works, it can begin to scale. And if it doesn't, then it has to get adjusted. But either way, this is the direction that housing policy is moving towards. So obviously $10,000 isn't going to fix housing, but it may restart something more important. The ability for supply to move again. One backyard, one decision at a time. And in a housing crisis driven by inaction, that matters a lot more than people think. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below.